Invocation of the Emergency Measures Act has given government the right to freeze the bank accounts of individuals, exposing individuals to potential financial ruin. For as the Minister of Justice said, supporting causes the government does not believe acceptable. When you freeze someone's bank account, you are effectively removing them from society. They may not be able to pay for food to feed their children, put gas in their car to go to work, or even to pay for electricity to heat their homes. I want to walk through step by step the emergency measures orders respecting the financial provisions, so that Canadians can clearly understand the financial implications, because I believe there's a great deal of misinformation out there right now. So we'll start here. So, pursuant to the emergency measures order, financial institutions can effectively debank someone as a designated person. Under the emergency measures regulations, a designated person is defined as anyone who has participated or supported an unlawful assembly. This gives the government incredibly broad powers. As Professor Paul David said, the debanking provisions are so broad that literally a clerk at a Quickie Mart who sold a propane canister to a protester could have his accounts frozen. Witnesses, members, Canadians are afraid. Members of Parliament have received thousands of calls and emails from Canadians who are concerned that even a small contribution to a then legal cause could result in their financial ruin. I'm going to ask the witnesses some clear and succinct questions. I would very much appreciate their response, not for me, but for the rest of Canada. To the witnesses, what specific acts could have or would result in the freezing of a bank account? You're on mute.
Madame Jacques, vous êtes en sourdine.
You on mute.
I apologize, Mr. Chair. What would lead to the freezing of a bank account under the order that came into force on February 15th would be if someone is funding directly or indirectly illegal activities as they are set out in the regulations that came into force. So, for example, if somebody was, giving money to a third party to enable them to participate in the illegal blockades that were occurring on the Hill, that person could be captured.
So to be clear, if a passerby gave an individual a cup of coffee, they could have their bank account frozen.
No, not a cup of coffee. We had a process in place. As you may know, the RCMP, the process had two prongs. The first one was our colleagues in the RCMP had a list of individuals and were shared with the financial institutions. So that's one way in which those individuals could be captured. The other one is if a financial institution using their algorithm found that there were any issues and further to verification found out that they were involved in illegal
So my apologies. I don't mean to be rude, but my time is short there. So, but just to be clear, a financial contribution to either through a crowdsourced platform or directly could result in their bank account being frozen.
Yes, yes.
So they didn't have to.
To the extent.
They did not have to actively be involved in the protest. They didn't have to be here in Ottawa or at one of the blockades.
No, not themselves. It could be indirectly.
So if someone gave $20 to the Freedom Convoy through a crowdsourcing platform, they could have their bank account frozen.
If that person gave the money after February 15th, it is possible, although very unlikely in view of the circumstances. And I say this because the banks, the financial institution relied heavily on the information that was provided by the RCMP, further to their own internal processes and verification. And so they approach it from basically a risk-based approach I would, although not impossible, that someone who gave $20 be captured and have their bank account frozen. I found that scenario, I think it would be in rare circumstances.
But it is possible.
It is possible.
So to my mind, the order is fairly clear. There are some caveats on it, but it says for an assembly, and the assemblies have now been disbanded. Have we stopped freezing bank accounts?
Yes, we have, and as a matter of fact, and I don't know if this information has been shared with a member of the committee, but yesterday, and I may want to leave the RCMP speak to this. I don't know if they're coming before you, but they did share a list with financial institutions, and financial institutions are unfreezing accounts. As of yesterday, they started yesterday to unfreeze accounts.
And how, just following up on that, and thank you for sharing that information. Following up on that, if you are an individual and you want your account unfrozen, how do they appeal? Who do they talk to? Whether it might have been frozen by mistake or in accordance with the Act.
Yes. So individuals whose account have been frozen, whether it mistakenly, but I haven't heard of any such incidents, to contact directly their banks. Customer service to do a first verification. And if the bank didn't feel it had the proper answer, could reach out to the RCMP to validate some of the information.
Thank you. Thank you, MP Lawrence. That's the time. We are moving to the Liberals. MP Zarowitz for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank all the witnesses for being with us today on such short notice. And thank you so much for the important work that you do. My first question, just because I think that just for those who are listening, I think we should just establish that when the Emergencies Act was declared and we announced the declaration of a public order emergency under the Emergencies Act to end the disruptions, the border blockades, and the occupation of Ottawa's downtown core. And under that public order emergency, there were a series of measures around stopping the flow of money that might actually be funding any of these public order measures and events that were taking part across our country. And perhaps directing it to the Department of Finance, can you give us a brief rundown of what the Proceeds of Crime and so Crime, Money Laundering, and Terrorist Financing Act, what it allows for, and what gaps it has that the invocation of the Emergency Act addresses?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. So we realized that there were gaps in the system as to what our colleague at the Financial Transaction and Report Analysis Center of Canada, FINTRAC, could capture. We realized that it didn't capture crowdfunding platforms, not all of them, and payment service providers. So when the order came into force, crowdfunding platforms and payment service provider had to register with FINTRAC and report any suspicious transaction to FINTRAC. This was in order to help mitigate that these platforms received illicit funds and increase the quality and quantity of intelligence received by FINTRAC. And also that allowed to make more information available to support investigations by law enforcement.
Okay, thank you. So just in layperson speak, basically cryptocurrencies and crowdfunding platforms were not included under the Proceeds of Crime and Terrorism Financing Act, and so that was what was put into place in terms of the emergency orders. Is that correct?
Cryptocurrencies were already covered, although what was not covered is the reporting by crowdfunding platforms and payment service providers. And I don't know if my colleague Julien may want to add to this question. Julien Brazeau.
Just very quickly. Okay, I don't see anything.
He
so
may not be there.
Okay,
Right.
yes, I don't see him there. Okay, my next question is, can you confirm that making these powers permanent cannot be done unilaterally and would require legislation?
To make these permanent, we have two options. We can do it by way of legislation, which includes regulations. So we can make these permanent by way of regulations.
Thank you. And can you also confirm that the powers are not retroactive and it only began after the Emergencies Act was declared?
Yes, I can confirm that it is not retroactive. We received many questions from concerned individuals who thought that it would retroactively apply, but it does not.
Okay, thank you. We saw reports of truckers leaving the convoy voluntarily after being warned by their insurance companies that their insurance may be suspended. Was the intent of the program, was this the intent of the program, and do you have any further information on the success of these measures?
Well, certainly the intent of the program was to certainly responsibilize and dissuade people from using money or their vehicle to participate in these illegal blockades. I do not know if any trucker or individual had their insurance suspended. I think the goal was to ensure that people left on their own volition, firstly.
Okay. So, but you wouldn't know whether or not there was an influence of the fact that their insurance, they could lose their insurance, that had an impact on them actually leaving.
I certainly think it did. I mean, a lot of these people that were involved, I mean, trucking is their livelihood. So to understand that your insurance could be suspended, I think would be an incentive to stop the illegal behaviors.
And then just maybe one clarification, my final minute. My understanding is that government actually has a limited role in terms of acting. Really, it's enabling this information to be shared with financial institutions and RCMP from FINTRAC in order for them to have a role to enforce.
Pardon me, I could not hear clearly your question. Would you mind repeating, please?
That's okay. Of course. With these emergency measures in place, and particularly as it relates to what we're currently talking about, the federal government has a limited role in terms of enforcing. It really is enabling RCMP and financial institutions to receive information from FINTRAC in order for them to actually enforce and take action.
That is correct. Privacy was of course, in the fore and of concern. We want to respect the privacy of individual and respect the Privacy Act. So the order allowed for information to flow from the RCMP and some institution directly to the financial institutions. So not through the Department of Finance. That is correct.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, MP Zarowitz. And now we are moving to the block and Monsieur Saint-Marie for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. And I too would like to welcome all the public officials who are here today and thank you for all of the efforts in these exceptional circumstances. I have a first question for the Department of Finance, probably for Madame Jacques. The order does not give many details about the mechanics and the criteria for freezing funds. When we read the order, there's not many details. So have you communicated more specific details to the financial institutions? Certainly. As soon as the order entered into force, we took measures to communicate on a regular basis with the financial institutions. And some of our discussions are on a daily basis to make sure we can help them to implement the order and to answer their questions. Thank you. So you've talked about discussions.